Hey guys, I'm alive, believe it or not. It's been 4 weeks since I last uploaded a video to my channel, probably 5 weeks by the time I'm done with this one. And the reason why is that I have had a bunch of schoolwork to do, and then I've been lazy. Very lazy. Now I feel like it's time for a change, so I wanna make stuff again. And today, as promised, we are gonna make the Rambone by Joerg's bra. And to be honest, this is one of my favorite slingshot designs. I really like the utility-ish look. You get what I mean. Anyway, what you might didn't know was that this was my first slingshot design to ever try out. And this was the first slingshot that I ever made. And even though this Rambone was a huge failure, I really liked the design of it. So, today I thought we'd be making a new Rambone that is a bit more aesthetically pleasing. And ergonomic for that matter. Because I mean, my first Rambone was everything but ergonomic. Also, it was too big for my hands. And actually, that brings me to the first part of this tutorial, which is printing out this template. And this is not the original size, this one is scaled down 5%. And that is so that it's gonna fit my hand a lot better. I recommend you scaling down your template too, if you have small hands like I do. Alright, let's move on to the design. This time I have been inspired by my earlier slingshot laminations, like the Teo hammer that I made a couple weeks ago. The difference is that now we're not going to be using only thin strips of wood, but thin strips of plywood. I've had this rough idea in my head and I draw it on paper, and it's actually pretty basic. You have this center right here that is going to be some red sandalwood, just like on the Teo hammer, and then all the thin lines that you can see here, they're just gonna be thin strips of plywood, which are gonna be stuck on top of each other, and hopefully that is gonna create a pretty interesting pattern. Now I haven't put any thought into how the core is gonna look and what materials I'm gonna use for that, so let's just pretend that it's not there. We're gonna start with the front and the back panel. The first thing you have to do here is to make the line in the middle, and I mean this is so easy that it needs no explanation. It's just a 20mm wide, 5mm thick, and 150mm long exotic wood piece, which could easily be cut out on a table saw. If you're like me and do not have a table saw, you could just use a jigsaw and a hand plane. Should be pretty easy to make regardless of the tools you have. Now we're gonna make the plywood parts, and I have already got my 4mm plywood set up. In one of my recent videos I showed that the plywood looks good in one direction and bad in the other. The obvious thing to do here would be to make strips going in the right green direction, and I tried that. It didn't look very good. It looks good from one side and then it looks bad from the other side. So then I tried doing the opposite by going this way, and you just get the same results, but then it looks good from the sides and bad from the front. And I want none of that. So I found a great solution was to cut strips at a 45-degree angle to the plywood grain. Alright, now I'm gonna grab the jigsaw and cut out a long strip from this piece of plywood. This strip is just slightly wider than the exotic wood strips that we made earlier. So this is how the wooden strips should look like. As you can see, I have made 9 more of these, so now we have a total of 10. And the idea here is to just glue all these together, because if you look at the template you can see that we have a bunch of staggered plywood pieces. We will have to glue these together and cut it at a 45-degree angle, and then we'll have a bunch of pieces that look like this, which we will then glue together. We're outside at the miter saw. We're gonna cut these at a 45-degree angle. Now this miter saw is only using an ordinary wood saw blade, which means it would totally rip this thing apart. Therefore I made this little jig right here, which is just 2 pieces of plywood laminated together, and it is gonna save this from splintering. I have now cut out 100 pieces, which I think should be enough. By dividing these into 4 stacks and flipping 2 of them over, we've now got our handle scales. Now I just gotta glue these together. Getting the whole thing aligned was a bit tricky. I couldn't use any clamps, so I had to just clamp this by hand and then hope that there wouldn't be any visible glue joints. Now as you can see, I have obviously done some off-camera work again. This piece right here is needed to cover this part. I have done this modification to every single one of the handle scales, meaning that we are ready to glue them together. But before doing any of that, we will have to look at the grain direction. Here I've drawn 2 arrows just to make it a bit easier for you. While making these strips, I made sure that every single piece should have the grain going in the exact same direction, meaning that on the left side it's going that direction and on the other side it's just reversed. This is all just for the aesthetics. It will make it look a lot better and you will see what I mean later. Now we're gonna have to glue these together. These have been drying for a day now and the bond is very solid, though the backside might need some sanding. The scales are now completed and it's time to make the core. Now what you'd normally do is to just grab your template, draw an outline, cut it out and make everything in line with the grain direction. This will create for a very solid structure at the handle and the upper parts of the forks. At the same time though, you would be having 2 weak spots, meaning that if you were to put heavy bands on this, the forks could potentially break and hit you in the face at full draw. That would be rather devastating, so I will try to prevent it. As you can see here, I cut the template in half and made 2 identical pieces. The grain is going diagonal to the slingshot frame, meaning that it should be able to handle more stress, which is always a great thing. I have now traced on all the templates and it's time to cut it out. For this I'll be using my jigsaw with this tiny little blade and also my coping saw. Now it's time to grab our 2-part epoxy and glue these halves together. The core will take a good time to dry, so in the meantime we will cut out the handle scales. Now that both of these handle scales are completed and the core too, we can laminate everything together using the same 2-part epoxy that we used earlier. Seems like we got a pretty solid bond and everything is looking nice and even, meaning that we can start with the shaping. As always, the first step in the process is to flatten out the sides. This is how the slingshot should look once you have done this step. We can now move on to the next step, which is cutting out the handle. With the Rambone PDF file came this handle template, which I will be using. Now as you can see, this is starting to get a little bit more 3-dimensional. Still not anywhere near a perfect handle though, so we're gonna shape it. Now for the rough shaping I will be using the coping saw. I will then move on to using wood rasps and then finish it off with some metal files. After more than 2 hours of filing and sanding, it's finally time to oil this thing. This is really exciting and I hope that all my work has paid off. Let's see. I'm having a hard time thinking of this as shiny and smooth, but I know some sanding will do. I will be using grits up to 1500. Sanded to 1500 grit and notice how it starts to get shiny. I will now apply the final coat of oil. We're back 3 days later and now it's time to apply our finish. For the first time in my life, I have finally got some paste finishing wax. This is called antique wax, which is a mixture of beeswax and carnauba wax, which will give us a slightly better shine and a slightly better water protection compared to a normal beeswax. Now we're gonna apply our wax, and the only thing you have to keep in mind is to try and rub it in along the grain and not to make too thick of a coating. After about 4 hours of drying, we can now buff the wax off. I don't have one of those stationary machines, so this is my DIY solution. This is just a buffing wheel, and then I made 2 homemade washers made of plywood, and then this is an M10 threaded rod with 2 M10 hex nuts. I understand there's a reason we have special machinery for this kind of stuff, because this is some solid tearing. Even though this buffing wheel is ruined, we still got a very shiny slingshot. While looking back at it the next day, I'm not sure whether it really is that shiny, but I still like the natural look. So as you had already figured out, the slingshot is now finished, and I think it is looking really good. This is my personal favorite of the slingshots I have made so far, and the handle is one of the most comfortable. Now I haven't tried shooting it yet, so that's what we're gonna do. So I'm standing at this field, which I had known for many years, but it hasn't been until now that I thought of it as a slingshot shooting range. From here to the tree line back there, it is about 250 meters, which fits perfect the day I decide to do a 250 meter will and tell shot. Sadly, I won't do any long range shooting today, just some short range. So the slingshot is banded up, single layer thera-band gold target band set, as always, and our target today is this red soda bottle. So we're standing at a distance of approximately 15 meters. The target is standing right there, and my ammo of choice is 16mm marbles. Four shots. I missed the first 3, but I hit the last one. But it didn't make any damage to the bottle, so let's try again. Not too bad considering that I usually hit the forks instead. Most of the shots hit like 5 centimeters to the sides, but the height adjustment was really good. Still need a lot of practice to get good at this. So guys, I really hope you liked the video and the slingshot. I certainly did. What my next video will be about is a secret. I haven't thought of anything yet, but I'll know I'll come up with something. I figure it is better not to make any promises, because then I can make whatever I feel like, whenever I feel like doing it. So yeah, I'll make a new video soon. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye.